You just can't beat the taste of Mazoe Orange Crush. Here's why.
There's more fresh orange.
Mazoe Orange Crush may cost a little more. The best usually does.
For decades, it's been the taste of family gatherings, Christmas dinners, weddings, and even refreshment.
Mazoe is manufactured in Zimbabwe. So if you mix it properly, you follow their steps 1 to 4. I found out that Mazoe can be better than Oros.
Mazoe Orange Crush is the most iconic beverage brand in Zimbabwe, transcending its status as a mere drink to become a cultural symbol. Historically rooted in the Mazowe citrus estates, the brand's survival and growth are the results of a complex interplay between colonial-era agricultural success, post-independence industrialization, and strategic corporate restructuring following the land reform program of the early 2000s. The establishment of the Mazowe citrus estate was not an isolated agricultural venture, but a calculated move by the British South Africa Company to diversify a colony that had failed to deliver the expected second rand or gold wealth similar to the one discovered in 1886 by Australian prospector George Harrison in the Witwatersrand gold rush in South Africa. Following a grand tour by Sir Henry Birchenough, the British South Africa Company was advised to shift focus from speculative mining to commercial agriculture. Up to that point, the British South Africa Company had burned through capital with very little return. This led to the policy of developing estates on strictly commercial lines for profit. Experimental orchards were planted in 1910. By 1914, the first commercial citrus estate was formally established in the Mazowe Valley, roughly 40 kilometers north of then Salisbury, or Harare as we know it today. The valley offered a unique microclimate with above average rainfall and deep alluvial soils. Strategically, it was close enough to the capital for administrative oversight, but remote enough to allow for a massive self-contained industrial estate. To transform the fever-ridden wilderness into a productive hub, the British South Africa Company implemented two massive infrastructure projects that defined the area's development. Built by the British civil contractor Poling & Co. between 1918 and 1920, the Mazowe Dam was a marvel of its time, the first large-scale dam constructed under the colonial administration in southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. This concrete arch dam had a convex upstream face, 30 meters high, with an additional 7 meters added to it in 1960, and 164 meters wide. 25,000 tons of crushed granite, 13,000 tons of sand, and 6,000 tons of cement were crafted into a reservoir covering 455 hectares when full, with a capacity of 35 million cubic meters. It was constructed primarily to provide reliable irrigation for the citrus groves, wheat, and maize.
Commercial groves of oranges were laid down near accessible water bodies to facilitate irrigation, such as the Mazowe Dam, built mainly to provide irrigation for the Mazowe citrus estates. The Patriot 2020.
Garvin Spur, a railway siding on the branch line from Salisbury or Harare to Shamva, served the estate. This siding was actually located on the farm Virginia, which formed part of the estate. From the estate packing houses, fruit was transported by mule trolleys, ox wagons, and early steam wagons down to this rail siding where the boxes of fruit would then be loaded into specially constructed railway fruit vans for onward shipment. These fruit vans could carry hundreds of cases of citrus fruit, and once loaded on rail, the citrus could reach markets like Cape Town or England within efficient export times of 7 to 8 days to Cape Town and 30 days to get to England via Beira in Mozambique. While the Mazowe Valley provided the gold, which is the oranges, Spur Foods was the forge where the raw materials were hammered into a national brand. Spur Foods began as a modest private enterprise far from the citrus groves of Mashonaland. It was founded in 1930 by Arthur Sturgess, an English entrepreneur and soft drinks manufacturer based in Bulawayo. The original facility was a small factory producing carbonated fizzy drinks for the local Matabeleland market. Sturgess identified a critical market gap. While carbonated drinks were popular, there was no high-quality, locally produced real fruit beverage that could be stored without refrigeration, a necessity in the Rhodesian climate. Despite being based in Bulawayo, Sturgess looked to the Mazowe Valley, the then British South Africa Company's premier agricultural project, for its raw materials. He recognized that the high acidity and sugar content of the Mazoe Valencia oranges made them perfect for a concentrated syrup. The formulation of Mazowe was a process of trial and error aimed at creating a triple strength real fruit concentrate. This was a specific Spur Foods innovation designed to highlight that their concentrate was more economical than imported British cordials, which were often only double strength. Sturgess developed a formula that used a high percentage of real fruit juice, roughly 50% in the original recipe, stabilized with citric acid and sugar. This allowed for a long shelf life and high dilution ratio, 1 part juice to 4 parts water, making it economical for large families. During the research phase, Sturgess reportedly struggled to find a name that sounded both local and refreshing. His wife is credited with suggesting the name Mazoe, a simplified colonial spelling of the Mazoe River. This immediately tethered the product to the prestige of the British South Africa Company's prestigious citrus estates. The relationship between the British South Africa Company and Spur Foods was one of a powerful landlord and a specialized manufacturer. British South Africa Company owned the land, the dam, and the trees through its subsidiary Mazowe Citrus Estates. However, the British South Africa Company was primarily an extractive and administrative entity. They were excellent at growing oranges but lacked the bottling expertise to create a consumer brand. In 1935, the British South Africa Company took a financial interest in a processing venture at Mazowe to handle oils and concentrates. While Spur Foods remained the primary consumer brand, the British South Africa Company-owned plant, Citrus Processing Limited, eventually began supplying the base concentrate to Sturgess, essentially becoming the factory at the farm. In 1944, the British South Africa Company fully absorbed the Mazowe-based processing plants, signaling its intent to control the value chain from tree to bottle. In mid-1965, the Mazoe factory had installed an $800,000 evaporator handling some 12,700 tons of fruit that year, which produced 636,440 liters of concentrated juice and 51.3 tons of citrus oils. The independence of Spur Foods ended shortly after World War II in 1945. The company merged with Schweppes International to form Schweppes Central Africa Limited. Founded in 1783, Schweppes is one of the oldest beverage brands. Based in Geneva, Switzerland, Jacob Schweppes and his partners Paul, the engineer, and druggist Gauss made use of the patent by English scientist Joseph Priestley to create the first production line for carbonated or fizzy beverages. From 1792, the Schweppes products made their way to London, which opened them up to the rest of the world. This gained the Schweppes brand a lot of exposure, primarily from the UK's colonies at the time, which were close to 25% of the total land area of the world. This popularity, coupled with the quality of the product and its high esteem, got the attention and acceptance of the royal family, and in 1831, Schweppes was given rights to use the royal seal on its bottles. Then came the iconic Schweppes logo, a result of the Crystal Palace exhibition in 1851, the first world exhibition in Hyde Park in the UK. It was a steel and glass dome covering 18 acres, and its centerpiece? An 8-meter-tall glass fountain, which became a branding piece for the company.
A Hurricane and a Spitfire led the flypast over London to commemorate the few who fought and won the Battle of Britain.
Fast forward to 1945 or post-World War II. Schweppes is looking to expand its global footprint, and one of the markets the company sets its eyes is in a bubbling drinks manufacturer in Bulawayo. Schweppes International did not enter by building from scratch. They entered through a high-profile merger with Spur Foods, the Bulawayo-based drinks manufacturing company owned by Arthur Sturgess. This led to the 1945 listing of Schweppes Central Africa Limited on the Rhodesian Stock Exchange, a move that provided the capital and global know-how required to scale up Mazoe production beyond the Matabeleland and Mashonaland markets. Before Schweppes, Mazowe was a high-quality artisanal crush. After Schweppes, it became a standardized industrial product with consistent brix levels and acidity suitable for long-distance transport and export. Schweppes' primary effect upon entry into our borders was distribution dominance. They realized early on that the Mazoe kiosks were brilliant but limited. Schweppes used its logistical muscle to move to glass, transitioning from small batch containers to standardized glass and later PET bottles. They established a massive network of depots in Mutare, Masvingo, Chinhoyi, and Gweru, ensuring that Mazoe was never more than a few kilometers away from any Zimbabwean, regardless of how remote.
Floyd, you deserve a Mazoe. Mazoe Orange Crush. Real values.
For the Coca-Cola company, I think it means that they get a terrific portfolio of brands to add to the stable of brands that they already have, and they're able to make those brands available to far more consumers because they have a wider distribution than we do.
A modern bottle of Mazoe contains 3 distinct corporate identities, which often confuse consumers but represents a masterclass in logistical efficiency. The association between Coca-Cola and Mazoe is a result of one of the largest beverage acquisitions in history. In December of 1998, the Coca-Cola company announced the $1.85 billion acquisition of Cadbury Schweppes' beverage brands in over 150 countries. This included the Schweppes name and its regional brands like Mazoe Orange Crush. At the time, in 1998, Cadbury Schweppes did not own 100% of the Zimbabwean operation. They held a minority stake of 44.9% in Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited. Interestingly, the Coca-Cola investment document clarifies that Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited licensed the Mazoe brand from Cadbury Schweppes. The license to use the Mazoe and Schweppes names was set to end on 31 December 2001. This was a ticking clock that forced the parties to negotiate how the brands would exist after that date. The period immediately following the December 31, 2001 license expiry was one of the most volatile in the company's history. It was marked by a shift from British ownership to American corporate oversight, followed by a dramatic tug-of-war between global giants and local Zimbabwean business tycoons. Once the license expired on December 31, 2001, the Coca-Cola company officially took control of the Mazoe and Schweppes trademarks in Zimbabwe. Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited was no longer a Cadbury company. It was fully absorbed into the Coca-Cola ecosystem. Coca-Cola's global strategy is generally to own the syrup or the brands, but not the bottling factories. And here is how this model works.
The Coca-Cola Company and its bottling partners are collectively known as the Coca-Cola system. The Coca-Cola Company does not own, manage, or control most local bottling companies like Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited. In their concentrate operations, the Coca-Cola Company typically generates net operating revenues by selling concentrates and syrups to authorized bottling partners. Think of Delta Beverages as one of those partners. These bottling partners combine the concentrates with still and/or sparkling water and/or sweeteners depending on the product to prepare, package, sell, and distribute finished beverages. The Coca-Cola's finished product operations consist primarily of company-owned or controlled bottling sales and distribution operations. Extract from the Coca-Cola Company website.
In early 2003, Coca-Cola attempted to indigenize the bottling operations as per their global strategy by selling them to Fidelity Life Asset Management, a subsidiary of Zimri Holdings. This did not turn out to be as smooth a process, with some contract agreements that Coca-Cola had made with local partners failing to be met. The local bottling company failed to secure the equipment needed to meet the quality production standard of Coca-Cola, which started to destabilize the brand's operations in the country. As a result, Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited started cutting down on its product lines in a bid to reduce foreign currency spending on syrups and concentrates, and focused its resources on maintaining the Mazoe production, which was the company's biggest revenue earner. In 2004, Coca-Cola terminated the bottling agreement and assumed 100% management and ownership to prevent the liquidation of Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited after it had been revealed that most of the equipment used by the company was tied to businesses facing liquidation. Then, in 2009 came the Indigenization and Economic Empowerment Act by the government of Zimbabwe, where majority ownership of businesses was supposed to be local, also known as the 51-49%. In that same year, Coca-Cola divested its stake to comply with local ownership laws. This is when Waterton Investments, comprising management and an employee share trust, acquired 51% of the equity, whilst Delta Corporation took the remaining 49%.
In June 2009, government approved the acquisition of Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited and Schweppes Exports Private Limited by its employees and Delta Corporation Private Limited from Coca-Cola Central Africa Limited and Coca-Cola Holdings Netherlands to BV Africa Limited, respectively. Youth Development, Indigenization and Empowerment Minister Xavier Kasukuwere said the government approved the indigenization arrangements of Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited and Schweppes Exports Private Limited because they met the 51% indigenous shareholding requirements as prescribed in terms of the country's indigenization and economic empowerment law. In a statement, Kasukuwere said the government was satisfied that the transaction would ensure broad-based indigenous participation through the shareholding by the Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited and Schweppes Exports Private Limited employees and Delta Corporation Private Limited. He went on to say, the new shareholders have demonstrated experience in managing bottling operations to ensure the perpetuity of Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited and Schweppes Exports Private Limited business and its franchise relationship with the Coca-Cola Company in Zimbabwe. This transaction allows local brands, local raw material suppliers, and downstream companies to continue in business. Consequently, jobs are protected. Extract from Institute of Developing Economies.
While the Mazoe brand name belongs to Coca-Cola via Schweppes, the Mazoe citrus estates, the physical land and trees, were the property of Interfresh. The Mazoe citrus estate and the Mazoe Dam were built, owned and managed by the British South Africa Company, which, in March of 1965, sold the estate to the mining and industrial titan called Anglo-American, looking into growing its agricultural portfolio. These agricultural assets were held through a dedicated holding company called the Anglo-American Rhodesian Development Corporation, or ADCOR Limited for short. By the late 1990s, Anglo-American began unbundling its non-core assets to focus on global mining. At the same time, Interfresh Limited, which had listed on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange in 1997, was looking for a prime asset to anchor its horticultural empire. On April 1, 1999, Interfresh officially acquired ADCOR Limited from Anglo-American. This was not just a purchase of trees. Interfresh gained 100% control of Mazoe Citrus Estates, the primary processing and growing hub, Glenara and Simuna Estates, thousands of productive orange, lemon and lime trees, and 60% ownership of the Mazoe Dam. Interfresh's Mazoe Citrus Estate was the exclusive supplier of orange concentrate to Schweppes. They formed a 50-50 joint venture with the Netherlands Floriculture Investments to create Mazoe flowers, utilizing the estate's vast irrigation to grow roses for the European market. A unique part of the deal was that Interfresh assumed 60% controlling interest in the Mazoe Dam, with the government holding the remaining 40%. This gave a private company unprecedented control over a national resource. The beginning of the end for Interfresh was not market competition, but a specific series of land acquisitions culminating in the Gushunga Holdings takeover. In January 2013, Interfresh was served with a notice that 1,599.7 hectares of the Mazoe Citrus estate had been reallocated. This represented 46% of their total arable land. The reallocated land held 52% of the company's immovable and biological assets, the actual orange trees. Overnight, the company lost 30% of its budgeted revenue.
The portion taken is the heart of the estate. It contains the most productive groves and the infrastructure that feeds the entire operation. This portion of land represents 46% of Mazoe Citrus Estate's total arable land, 30% of its budgeted revenue for the financial year 2013, and 52% of the value of immovable and biological assets. Extract from the statement by Tawanda Namusi, Interfresh Company Secretary, 2013.
The loss of land triggered a chain reaction that made the company uninvestable. At the time of the 2013 reallocation, Interfresh was in the middle of courting foreign investors for a multi-million-dollar recapitalization deal. Prior to the 2013 reallocation, one significant transaction involved Interfresh successfully securing the African Agricultural Fund as an equity partner. The African Agriculture Fund is a substantial $243 million fund dedicated to promoting food security across Africa. Following the reallocation, a planned $2.5 million in working capital from the African Agricultural Fund, which was due in January 2014, was frozen because the company's remaining assets were deemed insufficient to cover its liabilities. The investors, fearing a lack of tenure security, walked away. The company was left with a negative working capital position, liabilities exceeding assets by roughly $400,000. By late 2013, Interfresh's share price had crashed. Management realized they could no longer raise capital as a public company because the market value of the company was far lower than its net asset value. So they voluntarily delisted from the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange on December 31st, 2013 to seek private equity away from the transparency of the stock market, hoping a private investor would be less dissuaded by the political climate than by public shareholders. After delisting, Interfresh struggled as a private entity plagued by debt and the inability to maintain the aging infrastructure of the remaining 54% of the estate. After years in the wilderness, Takura Ventures, a private equity firm, moved to acquire 100% of Interfresh Limited. This effectively ended Interfresh's life as an independent Zimbabwean giant, folding it into a larger investment portfolio. The move to private equity did not provide the instant fix management hoped for in 2013 because of the immediate land shocks. However, it provided the tenure and structural flexibility needed to eventually attract Takura Capital, which had since recapitalized the business for a global export market. The company now focuses heavily on high-value horticultural exports including avocados, lemons, macadamia nuts, and fresh vegetables like peas and baby corn for the European and Asian markets. For decades, 100% of the oranges for Mazowe came from these groves. Following the takeover, production at Mazoe Citrus Estates plummeted. Schweppes Zimbabwe was forced to import up to 25% of its orange concentrate from South Africa to maintain production levels. But the woes and the assaults on the Mazowe brand didn't stop there.
Over the last 10 years, we've reformulated and reduced sugar and calories in many of our best-loved drinks. More than 30 years ago, we introduced Diet Coke, one of the world's most popular soft drinks. Today, 40% of the Coca-Cola we sell in Great Britain is without sugar or calories.
In 2015, the Coca-Cola company initiated a campaign to reduce calories per 100 ml of its sparkling soft drinks by 25% globally by 2025. The approach has been a multifaceted one, with the most impactful of these strategies being promoting portion control by shifting from 500 ml or 2-liter bottles to 200 ml or 330 ml mini cans, or in the case of Zimbabwe, from 500 ml to 440 ml PET sized packaging. The logic is that consumers will consume fewer calories if the unit size is restricted. Aggressively growing brands like Coke Zero Sugar and Sprite Zero, which are now the fastest growing segments of the company's revenue. And the most visible pillar, tweaking recipes to replace sugar with low or no calorie sweeteners like stevia, sucralose, and asulfame K. Since 2017, the company has reformulated over 1,000 products globally.
Companies that produce drinks with between 5 and 8 grams of sugar per 100 millilitres will be charged 18 pence per litre. It includes drinks like these. And a higher tax of 24 pence per litre on the companies who produce drinks with more than 8 grams of sugar per 100 millilitres.
The surcharge or tax on sugar drinks, the principle of taxing sugar drinks to set up a cancer fund is actually a very good one, because we're aware of the strong correlation between sugar consumption and cancer.
A major driver for this strategy is the global sugar tax movement. In markets like South Africa, Health Promotion Levy, Zimbabwe, special surtax on sugar content, and the UK, beverages are taxed based on the grams of sugar per 100 milliliters. By reducing sugar below the tax threshold, usually 4 grams per 100 mils, Coca-Cola can keep its prices competitive while competitors who don't reformulate are forced to raise prices. One of the brands affected by this reduced sugar push was Mazoe. The recipe was changed without notifying the public, which sparked a public outcry over the change in the original taste of Mazoe that Zimbabweans were used to. By June of 2018, the hashtag #BringBackMazoe had gone viral. Consumers accused the company of poisoning them with artificial sweeteners, with some claiming without scientific backing that the new ingredients were carcinogenic. Consumers even likened the new Mazoe aftertaste to the cheap powdery drinks that flooded the market in the 2008 hyperinflation era. As a result, sales plummeted as consumers threatened to switch to competitors like Barley House or imported cordials from South Africa. Mazoe is tied to Zimbabwean identity. Changing the recipe felt like a violation of national heritage. The social media sentiment for Mazoe at the time reached its all-time lowest point. The new Mazoe had 71 kilocalories, down from the original 84 kilocalories. Variants like Blackberry saw even steeper drops, 94 kilocalories down to 39 kilocalories.
My name is Charles Msipa. I serve as the Managing Director for Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited, manufacturers of Mazoe Orange Crush and syrups under license from the Coca-Cola company. I speak on behalf of the Coca-Cola system in Zimbabwe regarding consumer feedback received on the recently introduced low-calorie Mazoe recipe. We are amazed and overwhelmed by the love that Zimbabweans have for brand Mazoe, and we have listened to the feedback and will be bringing back the original Mazoe taste that consumers prefer and love.
On July 31, 2018, Schweppes Zimbabwe Limited announced the reintroduction of the original recipe alongside the less sugar version. To comply with Coca-Cola's health targets while satisfying local demand, they created 2 distinct labels. The original returned with its high sugar content but carried a higher price point to account for the sugar cost. Following the reversal, Mazoe reclaimed its 80+% market share in the concentrate category. Faced with a dying supply chain in the Mazoe Valley, Schweppes Zimbabwe launched a vertical integration strategy to bypass the disrupted estates. In 2021, Schweppes subsidiary Sunrise Citrus Estates began developing a massive new plantation in Beitbridge. As of late 2024 going into 2025, the total investment is pegged between 25 and 28 million US dollars. The project covers 2,700 hectares of land, a significant increase in the company's direct control compared to the fragmented Mazoe citrus estates era. Unlike the Mazowe Valley, which is prone to political land disputes, the Beitbridge project is on a 99-year lease in a special economic zone style environment closer to the Beitbridge Juicing Company, which Schweppes acquired to process the fruit on site. The goal of Sunrise Estates is to restore Mazowe to 100% local juice content. Currently, the Beitbridge Juicing Company processes about 28,000 tons of fruit, with plans to scale to 150,000 tons per annum as the new trees mature. Despite a 15% volume decline in early 2025 due to the Zimbabwean sugar tax, the Mazowe brand remains the dominant market leader, contributing 60 to 70% of Schweppes Holdings' total revenue. The Sunrise project is projected to generate 31.5 million US dollars in annual export revenue, consisting mostly of raw fruit and concentrate, once at full capacity, and will primarily target the Chinese and Middle Eastern markets. As of April 1, 2025, the ownership of the Mazowe manufacturer Schweppes Holdings Africa Limited underwent a significant consolidation. Delta Corporation, Zimbabwe's largest beverage firm, now holds a 69% majority stake, increased from 49%. Waterton Investments holds the remaining 31%. This entity represents the management and employee share ownership trust that spearheaded the 2009 buyout. The Coca-Cola company remains the owner of the Mazowe trademark and intellectual property. Schweppes Zimbabwe operates as a licensed bottler/manufacturer under a franchise agreement. Stanley Muchenje was appointed as the new managing director effective May 1st, 2025, taking over from the long-term head Charles Msipa. Mazowe continues to be the undisputed market leader in the concentrated juice category in Zimbabwe. Estimates place Mazowe's share of the domestic concentrate market at over 80%. While the competition from informal imports, lower-priced South African alternatives exists, the brand's cultural legacy remains its strongest moat. In December 2025, Schweppes reported an 18% increase in sales compared to the previous year. A massive Mazowe Magic promotion late in 2025 generated over 121,000 hectoliters in sales. The Mazowe brand family is the backbone of Schweppes Zimbabwe, accounting for roughly 60 to 70% of the company's total revenue. The company has moved away from relying on external farms like the original Mazoe citrus estates. Production is centralized at Willowville in Harare and Bulawayo. These plants handle blending of concentrate, sugar, and water. Schweppes operates 7 main hubs: Harare, Bulawayo, Gweru, Mutare, Masvingo, Chinhoyi, and Victoria Falls. By leveraging the Delta Corporation's fleet, Mazowe is distributed to even the most remote rural tuck shops. To combat national power cuts, the Harare factory is powered by a 1 megawatt rooftop solar plant, one of the largest industrial solar installations in the country. The most critical current development is the Sunrise Estates project in Beitbridge, designed to replace the lost production from the Mazowe Valley. $28 million has been invested into 2,700 hectares of new citrus plantations. The goal is to return Mazowe to 100% local fruit juice. Previously, disruptions forced the company to import up to 40% of its raw materials. The Beitbridge project is projected to generate $31.5 million in annual exports at full capacity. Mazowe is now officially exported to the UK, USA, South Africa, Namibia, Zambia, and Mozambique. It is no longer just a diaspora product, but is being positioned as a global fruit cordial brand. The Mazoe Orange Crush created a unique set of cultural memes and traditions in the region. Lore has it that Arthur Sturgess was frustrated, trying to find a name that sounded healthy but local. Whilst looking at a map of the Mazowe Valley near the Golden Stairs, a famous steep road into the valley, his wife simply said, "Why not just call it Mazowe?" The simplicity of the name is what stuck. In the mid-20th century, a staple of Rhodesian social life was the cane and orange. This involved mixing mainstay or similar cane spirits with Mazoe Orange Crush and soda water. It was the unofficial drink of the veranda culture and remains a nostalgic point for many in the diaspora.
The veranda provided an ideal place to enjoy a cane, orange, and soda. Mazoe Orange, of course. Window on Rhodesian archives.
The narrative of the Mazowe kiosks at town entrances was a masterstroke of visible branding and logistics. Kiosks were placed at entry and exit points of towns to capture the traveler market. This ensured that every Zimbabwean traveling between cities encountered the brand, reinforcing the brand's association with national travel and hospitality. They became geographical markers of arriving in a new town. Under Coca-Cola's health directives, Schweppes changed the Mazowe recipe to include artificial sweeteners and to lower sugar content. The national backlash was so intense that it was described as a national crisis. The brand is so deeply tied to Zimbabwe's identity that the public felt the recipe of their childhood was being stolen. This forced the company to revert to the original recipe in a famous PR U-turn. Mazowe is not just a drink. At this point, it's safe to say it's a national treasure, a brand that has defined the everyday Zimbabwean and survived land reforms, corporate buyouts, global changes in sugar laws, and even World War II. 96 years later, and still going strong, this is the story of Mazowe, the gold of the valley.
Floyd's got this great minibus. So at the weekend, Floyd likes to take the girls out. Floyd, you deserve a Mazoe. Mazoe Orange Crush. Real values.
What's up?
Yeah, I like that one too. What's up?
buffalo.
I'm in love with Mazowe. I'm in love with Mazowe. I got it from my home man. I'm in love with Mazowe. I'm in love with Mazowe.